Okay, so to add the cactus to the scene, you need to hit Shift F1, which is a shortcut for append, and then locate in the .zip, there's one called cactus model. So click that, then go to object, and then just select cactus and hit link append from library. And now we've got this big furry looking snake thing. So we need to position it so that it's, I want it to be sort of close to the camera, around about there. And it needs to be obviously a lot smaller. So something like that should be fine. Now it looks like one of those fluffy dogs where you can't see its eyes or anything because it's just ridiculously fluffy. Alright, so obviously we need to just tweak the texture, the particle settings a little bit so it's not ridiculous. So let's make this normal amount 0.01 perhaps, and the randomized amount, let's make that 0.03. Alright, that's not looking too bad. Okay, give that a render now with the cactus. It might, okay, previous render was 13 seconds. See how it looks with the cactus. Hopefully it won't add too much to it. Okay, that's not too bad. Yeah, it just added 3 seconds to the render. That's pretty good. Okay, cool. Now we can get into the fun stuff, which is the compositing. Okay, so one thing we're going to need to do in the compositor is we're going to have to add, we're going to add a sun flare, okay, or a lens flare if you want to call it that. So to create a lens flare in Blender, you need to base it off a physical object first. So we need to actually add a circle, okay, just to act as the sun, okay. And once you've added the circle, if you just press T to go to toolbar, make sure you click fill, and that'll ensure that it puts a little vertex in the middle there, so it's a solid object. I'm just going to rotate that by 90 degrees, place it way into the distance, something like that. And it needs to be basically, if you look at the finished render, it needs to be directly right there, okay? So let's just see if I can line it up correctly. Actually, I should just be rendering. Alright, let's do that sometimes. Let's move it to a new layer, and then I'm just going to render just with that object, okay? Hey, that was pretty good actually. Not bad. Not bad at all. A little bit up. Okay, cool. And once you've got it in the right place, go to the materials and then just click shadeless, okay? So that's just going to render that as a solid kind of white object like that, okay? Alright, now we need to move that to a separate render layer for the compositor. So just in the render layer settings here, render layers, just click the plus button there to make a new render layer, and I'm going to call this one sun, and let's call this one desert. Yeah, desert. And we need to make sure that on the sun layer, we select the layer in which the actual sun is on, which is down there in layer 3. So select that. And uncheck it on the desert one. So like that. Okay. And on the sun one, you need to also make sure that you unselect sky. Okay. So that it doesn't actually render the sky in the background, or else it's going to be almost impossible to composite with. And then once you've done that, go ahead, give it another render so that it can sort of save all those settings into the render, and then we can jump into the compositor. And hopefully I've done everything right, because sometimes I make a mistake and then I have to go and backtrack everything and then fix it and then go, and it's pretty unprofessional, kind of like this tutorial. So jumping to the compositor now, you can do that just by going up here, clicking compositing, or you can, as a shortcut, hit Control left arrow, which is the one I use. And I'm just going to move this over just so we can get a nice clear view. And we're going to click Use Nodes so that it starts to use the compositor. And first thing we're going to do, let's go ahead and create that sun flare. So we need to add the render layer. So go Shift A, Input, Render Layers. Okay. And then in this render layer, I'm going to change it to sun, like that. And if we add a viewer node and then hit Backdrop, you can actually see what the render layer is. It's just black with a white dot on it. Okay. And I'm going to add a blur node. Just drop this in here. This is going to give the sun a nice glow effect. Set it to fast Gaussian. Change it to relative. And let's make this, let's go 20%. So right, hit Y so that the aspect correction is okay. Maybe 30 if you want a really big kind of glowing effect. Alright, not bad. And now I want to give it kind of a streak effect. You know, like kind of how it's like a star type look when it, you know, how lens flares look. I probably don't need to describe it. So that's just Shift A, filter, glare, just to add this node here. Let's add a little viewer node. Okay. And before you can see anything, you need to turn down the threshold to 0. And the number of streaks is obviously going to define how many kind of edges to that star there are. We're going to change the quality to high and the iterations to 5. And we're also just going to, if you increase that fade there, that's basically increasing the length of the sun, kind of how far those streaks go. So if we just move that all the way out, Blender's going pretty slow all of a sudden. I'm not sure why. It's just compositing a sun, man. Come on. Alright, one more. 0.98. Let's try it. Come on. Don't take too long. You're embarrassing me, Blender. Woohoo! Alright. And you'll see that it's actually also rendered in the physical white circle there as well. So if you turn up the mix all the way to 1, it'll just show you the just the effects, not the actual physical object as well. So that's one thing to note. Yeah, hasn't changed anything, has it? Oh, cool. All right, now to get the flare effect, like kind of how you have those little beads kind of coming down and hitting the camera, we can do that by creating a ghost, okay? So if you just duplicate that glare node and then change this to ghosts, okay? Drop this in here. Let's add that. Okay, and there you can see we've got kind of a flare type effect. And you can increase the color modules as well, and that'll kind of color those beads to be a little bit different to each other. And I think maybe the reason it's going slow is I just changed it to high, which is probably unnecessary. So, you know what, I'm going to change that one back to medium as well. Yeah, that's a little bit better. It's made those things a little bit longer now, just so it's a little bit faster. Okay, cool. Now, to compile all of these effects together, I'm going to add a mix node. Plug both of these glare nodes into the mix node like that. Add a little viewer so we can see it. And then change the type to add, okay? And if you set the add amount to 1, it's basically going to add 100% of that one, 100% of this one, and it's going to place them together. If I set this to like 3, it's going to kind of provide like 300% opacity for the bottom input, which is this one right here. So if I set that to like 5, it's going to be 500%. Or if I set it to 0.5, it's going to be 50%. And that one controls kind of the bottom input like that. So if that makes sense, hope it does. Okay. And now I'm going to combine it with the blur. So I'm just going to duplicate that node that we just created. Add that in here. Okay. And you can see that the blur, like the actual glow here is, it's quite, yeah, it's not very fancy. It's not very big and in your face. So if I just move that to the bottom one like that, and then increase this to 3, then I can just, yeah, just very easily change how much of that glow is affecting it. Okay. And now to combine it with the original render, I'm going to add a mix node. Set it to add. Could have just duplicated the add node. I should have done that. It's all right. And set this to 1. And there you go. You can see a very, very subtle, really, really subtle actually, glare. If you change this to like 3, then you're going to get more of it. So actually maybe let's make that 2. Okay. All right. It's looking not bad. One thing I might do though is I might color the where it's coming from the sun. So if I add in an RGB curve, just drop this in here. Then click the red channel like that. If I just turn the red amount up, then I can color how it's coming from the sun. So it just gives it kind of a reddish orange look to it. This looks a little bit cooler than the default one, I think. I think so. Maybe just turn up the green channel as well, just so it looks a little bit more yellow. Awesome.